Welcome, everybody. This is Two-Way Tonight, and I'm Mark Halperin. I work here at Two-Way, and I will be filling in for the regular host of this program who is unavailable, but I'm happy to sit in. I've heard a lot of good things about you, and I'm glad you're here. I hope you'll afford me the peace, love, and understanding you afford the usual host. And unlike the usual host, I'm all for smack in the chat. So tonight's the night. If you like to put smack in the chat without offending my sensibilities as the host, please do. Do your worst. Just scatological profanity, personal insults, expressing intolerance for opposing point of view. Have at it. Let's see how you do. Just kidding. Don't put smack in the chat. All right. Thank you for joining. Two great guests tonight, a Democrat and a Republican. And they're lively, they're sassy, they're it's another good word for them. Spicy, salty. You'll enjoy them. They are, of course, Nomi Konst, the Democratic strategist, and J. Hogan Gidley, and they'll be here in just a moment. The big thing that happened today, as far as I'm concerned, is the president's speech in Saudi Arabia. It's epic, whether you agree with him or not. An extraordinary enunciation of the president's point of view about the world, the Middle East, America's role in the world. It's not a speech George W. Bush would have given, or really a speech that any Democratic president I know would have given. It's singularly Trump, and you'll hear why in just a moment. I'm just amazed at some of the things he said. Now, none of it's like out of step with what you might expect if you followed the president's worldview closely, but it is quite something. So we'll be playing extended excerpts from that. In addition, there is, as we like to say in the news business, cats and dogs, some information about the new book purporting to be about the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline. I think it falls short of that, but we'll talk about that. Bipartisan negative reaction to the president's verbal acceptance of a Qatari plane. I said a few days ago when this first broke, I guess maybe yesterday I said it. I think that plane will never happen, although it is in the United States now, as far as I know. But I don't believe the president will ever fly on that plane. And today's activities lead me to believe that that projection, not a prediction, but a projection, will turn out to be right. And the S&P up big, all the losses gone after today. The markets opened a little bit down and then they surged during the day. Biggest news of the day for some of you, not for me, but for some of you. Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson deemed Hall of Fame eligible by the Commissioner of Baseball. I could try to shoehorn that into a political story, but it's really not. But big deal for many people. And I wonder if the voters, the baseball writers, will vote them in on the first ballot, because on the merits, Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame based on his performance. All right, let's bring in our guests and just start running through this. As always, because our name is Two-Way, not One Way. If you wish to be in on the conversation today and you're here on the Two-Way platform, please raise your hand, raise it high and proud. We will get to many of you soon, but I'm only calling on people who raise their hand. Maybe a bad policy, but that's my policy. Ladies and gentlemen, wearing black ballet shoes and weighing in at a slim 148 pounds, J. Hogan Gidley. Hogan, do you weigh more than 148? Got to unmute, my friend. There you go.
Homeboy, I weigh 180.
Come on.
Yeah.
Is that soaking wet?
No, it's because muscle weighs more than fat, Mark.
Huh. No, I said soaking wet.
I know what you said.
Okay. Hogan, do you know Nomi? Do you know her?
Of course. We used to be on panels all the time back in the day.
Is that true? What kind of shows have you guys been on together?
We did a lot of CBS together way back.
Yep.
And then I saw you at the correspondence dinner, and he was indeed wearing ballet flats.
He was.
They were not ballet flats.
Everybody knows they were ballet flats, Hogan.
No
They weren't. They weren't.
So I'm delighted to hear you two have a professional past, and I can already see the rapport is so sizzling. I may just step out of the way. So if you two take over and turn this into like Crossfire, and I'll just cue the commercials. No, Hogan, this is Nomi's second time on the show. She was spectacular the first time, an instant fan favorite, and I have higher hopes now that I know about the built-in rapport. I have higher hopes than I did before. Do either of you have a point of view about Pete Rose being eligible for the Hall of Fame?
As you said, on the merits, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Nomi,
Sure.
I can tell from your face, not a huge sports fan, but surely you're excited about our New York Knickerbockers.
That yeah.
Yeah.
As a New Yorker, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I love an underdog. I grew up in
Yeah.
Buffalo, so you throw me an underdog, I'm all in. I'll be the most sporty person possible
Yeah.
and forget about it afterwards.
Do you know the last time the New York Knicks won an NBA championship? Do you know when the last was?
Of course
Long,
not.
73.
Somebody,
Years ago or
somebody back me up. I thought it was 71.
I don't know. I
thought it was 71.
Oh.
But before either of you were born, 73 according to the chat. Maybe you're right, Hogan. I thought it was 71. Anyway, Bill Bradley, New York Knick Hall of Famer, who's been on two-way, was at the game last night, and I almost cried at the cutaway. He was just celebrating like some great moment, and it just the whole city is just on fire, and they'd be hard pressed to lose this series. I'm not sure how they'll do after this round, but for New Yorkers, very exciting. For people in Cincinnati, probably mixed feelings regarding Pete Rose. All right, let's talk about the president's speech again. I'm going to play a bunch of it because it's so epic. But I want to ask you this baseline question because we always try to focus on the real lives of real people here. Okay, and I've covered plenty of presidential trips of both presidents of both parties, where the White House press corps and the White House staff treats us like every American's paying close attention, and it's like even when it's like in Asia and the time zones are totally messed up. So just as a baseline, Nomi, you first. Do you think what's happened so far in the president's trip? If I walked into a diner in Green Bay or a Mexican restaurant in Sioux City, Iowa, do you think anybody's paying attention to this, real people, or no?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe if they're Jewish Americans on a more conservative side, they could be concerned about what's happening with Qatar. I mean, I could see that playing out. I mean, there are a lot of, I know we're going to get to this, there are a lot of influencers who do speak to everyday Americans that might be able to translate what's happening over. If it affected like gas prices, sure. If it affected the tariffs, absolutely. But I think, it's a couple of steps removed from the everyday person's, pains that they're suffering.
Yeah. Hogan, do you agree with that?
Oh yeah. No one has a clue. I do think there are some vested interests going on over there for different subsets of voters that maybe care about a certain thing, but also every newscast tonight will lead with something from this trip. So they'll see something about it, but most Americans, as you probably know, will say, oh, look, Trump's overseas, and then go on about their business.
All right. Sorry, I was reading a tweet about Pete Hegseth Town Hall.
Okay.
1,800 people checked in Iowa. Okay, guys, I want to read you first before we start showing some of the sound bites. Dr. John, who's a regular on this program, he's a doctor in Tennessee, very thoughtful guy. Here's what the message he sent me. I said Hegseth, sorry, Buttigieg Town Hall in Iowa. Sorry.
With the beard, with the rebranding.
With the rebranding. All right, here's what Dr. John, a very discerning physician, says about the Trump speech. Was that the most consequential international speech by a U.S. president since what? Reagan? Never thought I'd hear a Republican president give a speech that sounded like it was written by Jeff Sachs. For those, and I agree with his analysis on that point exactly. For those who don't know, Jeff Sachs is a liberal Democrat who lives here in New York City, and we shop at the same fruit stand, by the way, or at least we did historically. Jeff Sachs is very, very much like a anti-neocon. Very much America needs to stay in its own lane and not be engaging in imperial activities around the world. And that's what Dr. John said. I think very shrewd. I think it's a very shrewd analysis of the speech. So with that, let's play some. First of all, little news. Here's number one, Trump and MBS. Again, just as this like a buddy picture. These two guys are just hanging out like Butch and Sundance. And they're one of many pictures we could show you of the two of them. You can just see Hogan and I at least have seen that look on Trump's face. You don't see it often. You don't see that particular look often, but there's a reason for it. Okay, number two, President made some news today. He lifted sanctions on Syria, being seen as an outreach to Iran. And of course, the Republican Party is very much split on whether to do a deal with Iran or not. Again, this divides the party and MAGA just like in a million different ways. Nomi, I'll ask you the same kind of question. Do you think the American people give a hoot about what Donald Trump does with Iran?
Again, no. I mean, I think foreign policy in general is something that most Americans, unless it affects their daily lives, if their sons and daughters are sent to war, or if gas prices go up, maybe they're paying a little bit more attention. But and obviously with tariffs right now, but I think generally speaking, no, most people probably don't understand the complexities of Iran, unless again the problem.
Yep.
American community.
Understood. All right, Hogan, let me ask you the question about Iran this way. Can you explain, like in simplest terms, why does Iran so divide MAGA?
I think for several reasons. One is because their desire to destroy the West, to kill Jews. I think that's a very significant problem. But at the same time, I think anytime you can have someone like Donald Trump who has enough credibility or clout in the region to try and come up with some type of peaceful solution there and put an end to generational bloodshed, okay, we'll see what you got. The removing sanctions on Syria, though, is going to, as you said, splinter the group for a million different reasons, not the least of which is, have we seen this play before, or is this something Trump can do that nobody else has been able to do? And that's quite possible, because, I mean, that tends to be the trend with Donald Trump. But I think it comes down to, as you noticed in that speech, I think he made a point where we're gonna pull the sanctions back with Syria, for example. We're going to try to figure out Iran, but we're going to give them the chance to fix this type mentality. If they don't fix it, the outcome will be very bad for them, I think is really the punchline here.
Yeah. No, I mean, you've had plenty of great experiences in your life that I have never had, never will have. But I have seen Hogan with the man who's now the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, and it is the closest thing you can possibly have to being the president of Abbott and Costello. The two of them together are just hilarious. And Ambassador Huckabee, no surprise, has been in the last few days incredibly outspoken about Trump not going to Israel and all these tensions over Iran and everything else. It's incredible when you put a political commentator and politician in Israel. Crazy things can happen. In an
evangelical. I mean, he's an evangelical.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my way of saying, besides, if you can ever be in the presence of Mike Huckabee and Hogan Gidley, I recommend it. Number two, you should do a Google News alert for Ambassador Huckabee, because he's saying some great stuff. Hogan, could you get him to come on two-way? I know the time difference makes sense.
I can try. Sure. We were texting yesterday.
I bet you were. Ask him if he'll come on two-way.
I will.
Okay, good. All right. Now, long awaited. I promise you many clips from the speech. Long awaited. Here we go. Again, if you want to be in the conversation, please raise your hand. This is the president talking about a new generation in the Middle East transcending ancient conflicts. Number 3, please.
Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that.
Nomi, thoughts on that?
I mean, ask Jamal Khashoggi how he feels about that. Yeah, so very complicated, obviously. I found it fascinating how he was like, it was almost like an American conference. Have you ever been to one of these like big expos where they're featuring all the goods in one industry? It was like the America Expo, where they had, Elon Musk and like Sam Altman and, all of these big American tech companies, and basically telling Qatar and Saudi and UAE to invest because they've got all this oil money in their companies. I just thought the whole thing was incredibly bizarre. And capitalism is not anything new when it comes to solving foreign policy or igniting foreign policy like chaos, but it was so overt, and I don't know. I mean, it like reeked of transactional politics that went beyond. I mean, I don't think it had anything to do with foreign policy. I think it had to do with, what Donald Trump is going to provide to his fellow his friends who got him in office, and potentially what he's going to get out of it, which we'll talk about later, once he's out of office, for his friends and family.
Hogan, thank you for that. No, very interesting. Hogan, thoughts?
Again, I watched a good portion of the speech, not all of it. I think this is right in line with what Trump ran on, what he won on, what he did the first time around. I mean, the first trip he had in the previous administration was to Saudi as well. I've been in the room with MBS before. I know their relationship is very good. I've been in several meetings with he. and with Donald Trump and MBS as well. It is a fascinating dynamic because it's obvious what Trump is looking for. He said this in the speech. He alluded to the fact he wanted to be the peacemaker. He wants to be someone who can go in and make a deal. And a lot of times commerce is the way you bring sides to the table because they both want to be rich. They both want to have prosperity in their regions. The problem is some of these nations like Iran, like Syria, may not care at all about that for any of their citizens. So that's a reality that may kind of slap the ideology in the face at some point. But regardless, you can't blame the guy for trying. I mean, he's going over there. Obviously, the visuals are incredible. The reception he received is amazing. They clearly respect him. They clearly like him. But what gets out of that, time will tell. But it's obvious what Trump wants to do, which is try to create and broker peace in that region.
Let me ask you, please go ahead. Of course.
I mean, let's just call this what it is. This isn't about foreign policy or cutting some sort of deal. This is the Mideast wanting to wash away, just like they did with, the World Cup, wash away their sins with whatever sort of spectacle they can, whether it's putting money into tech companies, which has been going on for a while, or putting it into sports teams, or putting it into these the purple carpet that Donald Trump went off on, and the elaborate dinner with the drums. I mean, this all looks great, but pull back the layers and we know exactly who these countries are. And if America is going to stand for what we have stood for since World War II, we should be openly asking questions about this, as Joe Biden did. And that's just not coming from Donald Trump right now.
All right, I'll go. Hogan, go ahead.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Nomiki, but I think everyone understands that. Like the administration is very clear-eyed here. Now, the difference is there a potential for a deal to be done? Of course. I don't know what percentage that would be, but I will tell you, because of the disdain that Saudi had for Biden, for example, or disrespect they had for Biden, at least Trump's coming to this with some sense of clout with this group that, of course, they want to wash away their sins. Of course, they want to pretend like the things they've done in the past have never happened. But we're never going to get to a point where peace is even a thought, another Abraham Accords, anything like that is even on the table, unless you're starting with a position of power or at least somewhat mutual respect between the two leaders. Joe Biden didn't have that. He never did. Trump has had it and does now. So as he likes to say, we'll see what happens.
Nomi, I'm so grateful to you for speaking so honestly and with such moral clarity. And I agree with both of you, really. It's complicated, right? Because we have to deal with them. We can't, and there's no doubt that engagement of this type, I think, has a greater prospect of making them less likely to violate human rights, bringing them more into what our sense of the community of nations is than some other tactics. This is on point. This is number 7. This is the president talking about this issue of previous presidents, in his view, judging the past of these Middle East countries. Number 7.
In recent years, far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins. They loved using our very powerful military, and now it's really the most powerful it's ever been. We just are getting a budget approved, $1 trillion, highest budget we've ever had in history for military, $1 trillion. And we're getting the greatest missiles, the greatest weapons. And, I hate to do it, but you have to do it because we believe in peace through strength. You have to have the strength, otherwise bad things could happen. But hopefully we'll never have to use any of those weapons. Seems to be an awfully big waste of money if you're never going to use them, but hopefully we'll never have to use them, because the destructive power of some of those weapons are like nobody's seen before. I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace. That's what I really want to do.
So the line about look into the soul of leaders is a reference to George W. Bush saying he looked into Putin's soul, of course. And it's really a profound thing. And again, Nomi, I couldn't agree with you more about the importance of not whitewashing history and not lowering our standards below a certain point. But I have to say, there's something about Trump's realism that breaks through for a lot of Americans. And again, it goes back to like Trump with tariffs in China, or Trump with some of the other things he proposes, the border. Like, he's against the status quo. And if you want to defend the status quo about Saudi Arabia, for instance, and say, well, the way Obama and Biden did it was perfect, you got to look at the results, right? And it just nobody's happy with the situation. And he does have the capacity to have rapport, right? And that matters, right? Nomi.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he has this brilliant way of capturing something that Americans are across the board frustrated with, whether it's the fact that so many jobs went overseas in the 70s, and then again with trade policies in the 90s, that makes sense, but he's not providing solutions. So, saying that we're going to end our trade agreements around the world before bringing manufacturing jobs back home, that's not smart policy. Disrupting the world order and saying we're now isolationists because we're not the peacemakers that he thinks we are. Or, I mean, what I found interesting was he's raving about our big military budget and all the weapons, which kind of goes against his theory, but simultaneously says that we're not the peacemakers around the world, and we don't want to be dropping those bombs. But it's not like he's providing some sort of alternative. He wants to disrupt the world order. He wants to make American power, smaller. I do not agree with many of the policies that the U.S. has conducted over the last 60, 70 years. Just look at the global South. But that doesn't mean that you completely flip over the world order. I'm a Bernie Sanders Democrat. I think that we should have more humane policies and more humane foreign policy when it comes to these agreements. But it doesn't mean that we hand over the keys to Russia and China.
Hogan.
Right. I mean, you don't want to hand over the keys to Russia or China. I do think, Mark, you're hitting on something about Trump that has always been fascinating to me, because as a lifelong Republican and having worked for the Rick Santorums of the world, the Mike Huckabees, the Elizabeth Doles, he brings a different aspect to the office, but also a different level of understanding. He does call it as he sees it. He is very say the quiet part out loud. He doesn't see the world as he wants it to be. He sees it as it is. And so when he's trying to make these massive changes, not just here at home, but globally, he's coming to this with an ideology that he's been talking about, since he was on Oprah Winfrey in the 80s. And there's a word that kind of permeates through his administration, whether it's the tariffs, where a country can charge us a certain amount for bringing goods into their country, but we can't charge them. It's men and women's sports. It's the prescription drugs, whatever it is. It's fairness. He's tapping into something where the American people don't feel like they're getting treated fairly on the global stage. And so his voice to that, I think, is something that we've not seen from the Republican Party in a while. And I like that he's taking it there. As far as this meeting, though, is concerned, and this trip is concerned, as well as I do, because I've been there, you bake in a lot of successes beforehand. So when you get there and they happen, you can say, see what we did, even though a lot of this stuff was kind of, orchestrated before.
The pre-cooked deliverables.
Of course. Yeah. And there'll be some. I bet there are a lot.
Hogan, does it, when the president's with MBS, does he speak English?
Yes.
Yes.
I always find it interesting that the leaders who don't speak English
speak a lot of English.
Have a lot of know exactly what's going on. Yeah.
I like when they interrupt the interpreter to say the interpreter get it.
I got it. Yeah. I got it from here.
Sure. And Hogan, what's he like that we wouldn't know, having not met him?
Who?
MBS.
Oh, I mean, I don't really get into too much of how MBS is.
I mean, is he hilarious? Is he cordial? Is he?
I think they have a very good rapport, and you saw some of the protocols broken when Trump's around.
Speaking of that, while you say that, roll number 8, please. While Hogan talks about some of the protocols being broken, this is MBS driving the president around in a golf cart.
Is that a Lee Greenwood cover?
I don't know. Okay. It's kind of a racket. I'm sure the Secret Service thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Kill the audio on that thing. Kill the audio. It's too loud. Too loud. All right. Again, if you want to be in the conversation, please raise your hand. All right. I'm going to switch topics. We may come back to that with the folks there. Number one, 12, please. Sorry, 12. So today, the momentum had been moving in the direction of Republicans really objecting to the president's nutty Qatar jet, which again is never going to happen, I don't think. So today, amongst others, John Thune raised serious questions about it. Ted Cruz raised questions about it. And then 13, one of Hogan's favorite public servants, Senator Charles Schumer, sent a letter to the Attorney General seeking more information. Hogan, Donald Trump will never set foot on that plane, correct?
I don't know. All
right, Nomi, you think he'll ever set foot on that plane?
No, and I don't really understand. I mean, knowing that, why would he move forward? He makes a lot of these moves, and usually it's like you lose one and then you gain three or something like that. Yeah. But I mean, not only is this something that is ridiculous, it's a payoff. A huge, one of the biggest scandals. I mean, there's so many at this point in presidential history when it comes to potentially buying off a president. But aside from that, it's also a security issue. Like they have to, it's made by Boeing. They're going to have to like deconstruct it, and it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and then Congress has to approve that money. It's just a mess.
That's why he's never going to set foot on it. It's not
that's my concern.
Yeah,
security.
Yeah, that's what well, not just you're talking about eavesdropping, or are you talking about outfitted to protect the president?
I mean, all of that. Yes.
Yeah. That's why he's never going to get foot on it. It's not that he'll say, "Oh no, I was criticized by Chuck Schumer. I can't."
Oh yeah, no, he didn't care about that.
He didn't care about that. If anything, Hogan,
that'll make him
want more.
Make him want.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. I'm not sure you all took me seriously when I said you need to be paying close attention to Ambassador Huckabee, the U.S. envoy to Israel. So
I do.
So please put up the tweet. This is from a couple days ago, but just to give you some idea of the game that Ambassador Huckabee has. Put that up full, please. This is Mike Huckabee. Guess who's our dinner guest tonight? It may shock some folks, but Van Jones, 68, a.k.a. Van Jones. And I've been friends a long time, don't agree on a lot, but agree on support for Israel. I truly cherish our friendship. I have to say, I love Governor Huckabee, and that's a great picture. I do not like this trope. I don't know if it's a trope, whatever it is. When people say, don't agree on a lot. Like sometimes people will tweet about something I said and they'll say, I don't often agree, or I don't always agree with Mark Halperin. I just, say what you want to say. You don't need the throat clearing. I don't always agree. I bet he and Van Jones agree on quite a bit, but maybe he's worried he's going to be attacked as left wing.
That's the whole game, right? I used to go on Huckabee's show, and he's always very nice to me. And then he'd do his little musical appearance, that show on Sundays. What was it?
Saturdays. You went on the Saturday. What role,
I did.
I
did a live show.
What role were you playing when you went on?
I was the token leftist, always.
Hogan, did you know she went on that show?
I remember her going on the show. Yes,
really?
I went on his new show in Nashville, not the old one.
Do you know how I described that Saturday show? I described it as McLaughlin Group meets Hee Haw. That's how I described it.
And he always looked like a comedy act. Like one time he had this guy that looked just like Obama, just like Obama.
Yeah. That's why I was like hee haw. All right. Picking and a grinning. Raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. I want to talk about
just real quick. I know Van Jones because I worked with him on criminal justice, et cetera. Yeah. But you have to say we don't always agree, because if you don't, then someone on Twitter or Instagram is going to roast you for changing sides or not being core principled.
Right. F them. Don't cater to their jackal sensibility. Just say, here's my friend Van Jones.
Well, we all don't have the power on social media that you have, Mark Halperin, to ignore that. Some people need a disclaimer.
I don't want to jinx it, but my Twitter feed, the comments are so positive. It's nuts. It's
How could they not be?
No, I mean, I don't know. It's amazing. Anyway,
very likable.
I'm going to ask you guys some
really yes. Not on the left. Anything you do on the left, it doesn't matter.
To quote Obama to Hillary, you're likable enough, Mark.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you guys some yes/no questions, and I'm just going to ask you, please say yes or no, unless your answer is not yes or no, but really try to say yes or no. Okay, Hogan, did Joe Biden exhibit significant cognitive decline from at least 2024 to he left office?
Without question, yes.
Okay. Nomi?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Hogan, is the reason Democrats who claim they didn't see it Is the reason they say that because they actually didn't see it, or is it some other reason? Is the reason they say it because they didn't see it?
They saw it. No.
They saw it. Nomi.
Some other reason.
Some other reason. What's the other reason?
Oh boy. You really want to hear my whole theory on this?
Yeah.
Okay. I blame the Clintons because the Clintons forced themselves into, 2016 when Joe Biden should have run and should have won and then didn't. And then as a result, they set him up for 2020 when Bernie should have won and didn't win. And then we got, Joe Biden in 2020 when he was definitely on the decline. And then because next in line would be Kamala Harris, we got Kamala Harris. And then all of a sudden, all these consultants like David Plouffe, and I'm going to name names, Axelrod, all the folks that brought you the DNC failures of the last, 8 to 10 years are now saying it was Joe Biden's fault. It was all of them. It was a collective. And the DNC last 15
I agree with you 100%. That's great analysis. It really is. But that doesn't speak to the question. When like I interviewed Michael Bennett today on Next Up. Very honest guy. I have a good relationship with him. I said, basically, did he exhibit mental decline? He said he shouldn't have run because he wasn't up to it. Kind of like, he didn't have the energy or the poll numbers, whatever it is. But even he would not say, well, of course the guy talked to a dead congresswoman. Of course the guy had no public schedule. Of course the guy had to skip events at international summits. Yeah. I don't understand why. And same with Bernie. Bernie was on a show this weekend or last weekend and said, did he have cognitive decline? He said, I don't want to talk about it. And I know Bernie doesn't like to talk about anything involving humans except policy and humans. You know what I mean? I credit him for that. Rand Paul's the same way. I respect them both because they don't play the crap with the reporters who just want to ask political gossipy questions. But I've said this before. This seems to me to be an important issue of credibility for the party and understanding of history and the ability to come clean. And so I say again, why won't people like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Michael Bennett, why won't they say, of course, he exhibited cognitive decline. It got really bad towards the end and the debate showed it. But in retrospect, I look back and of course he did. Why won't they say that?
I think, honestly, I think that most Democrats right now want to move forward. I'm not saying this in a flippant way. I think they want to move forward and focus on Trump. And people are, there's 3 books out right now being promoted about how Joe Biden, by all very esteemed authors, about how this happened. And we're not going to gain anything out of this. You really want to know. And the reason why I gave that analysis before is because we had some infrastructure issues in the DNC that folks just didn't want to change. It's not, we don't have fairness in our party. Yeah. Otherwise, Joe Biden would have been the president in 2016 or would have won, or Bernie Sanders would have won in 2020. But it's because we had these institutional players that were just, pulling the levers here and there in the primary process and otherwise, that just wouldn't relinquish control. And these same folks are now the ones who are blaming Joe Biden. So I don't think the Joe Biden, was he mentally there or not conversation is helpful. I think institutional questions are the ones that are going to move us forward. If we really want to reform the party, that's how we're going to have better candidates.
All right. So I think it's helpful for reasons I've said before. I won't belabor it. Another yes, no question. Did the press, like CNN, say, report everything it observed and knew about Joe Biden's cognitive decline from 2020 to 2025? Did they report everything they knew? Hogan, or 20 to 2024? Yes or no? No. Okay. Nomi, yes or no? No. Okay.
Access.
Is the reason they didn't report it, A, they were threatened by the Biden folks that if they did, they'd lose access, or B, they didn't want to help Donald Trump win, or C, something else, or a combination? Nomi.
Combo.
So would you say 50-50? Threatened by the Biden people, 50%, 50% didn't want to help Trump win?
I mean, it's not like he was giving many interviews.
80-20. Yes, they gave him no access. It's 80-20.
80-20.
80-20. They're not afraid of the Bidens. Come on.
Wait, I'm sorry.
80 reporter. I'm sorry.
80-20. 80 they didn't want to help Trump, or 80
Yes, 80 they didn't want to help Trump. 20 they don't care about Joe Biden. He was just a useful idiot in this situation. And by the way, just like the southern border, which Joe Biden left open not by accident, but was by design. The press did the same thing here. This wasn't by accident. It was by design. Now, the means or the ends was because they didn't want Trump. That's the bottom line. So they're going to carry the water from ever. They're not afraid of Joe Biden. He's been in office half of a century. He can't hurt them.
But with that being said, it's not like Fox News was really, doing extra work either. So
they were. That's not true. They were reporting on the question of Biden's cognitive decline.
Yeah, they did.
They did too much on it. I would say they did maybe too much on it. They did a ton on it. And as I've said before,
but everyone else is doing it now, so they're just catching up to the party.
Yeah. So Jake Tapper, along with Alex Thompson, thank you, have this book out, and I've not finished it. I've started it. I haven't finished it, but I've read the news accounts. Is it credible for either or both of them to do a book saying here's the conspiracy that no one's told you about until now? Is that credible for them to be the authors of that book? Hogan, would you differentiate between Alex Thompson and Jake?
I mean, to some degree. I mean, the clips of Jake are pretty etched in stone at this point. How dare you question this? And now he's writing it as if he knew the whole time.
Yeah, no. Well, no, he's not saying. He's saying he didn't know because there was the cover up was so deliciously effective that he couldn't break the story until now.
This is the problem. What's covered up? He's the president of the United States. He can't get through sentences. He can't get upstairs. He can't get downstairs. Listen,
you know my line. No, you know my line, Hogan. I have to say my line. You didn't need inside sources. You just needed a C-SPAN subscription.
Yes. Well, anyway, when Donald Trump walked down a ramp in the rain with dress shoes and he shuffled because he didn't want to fall and didn't.
Yeah.
The media went, they had doctors on, they had orthopedic surgeons on. This guy can't get through anything. Joe Biden couldn't. Oh my gosh. He was so mentally and physically in steep decline, and they acted like he was running marathons and triathlons behind your back.
Yeah.
It was insane.
It was insane. Nomi, one more comment on this, then we're going to go to the questions.
Listen, I mean, was it there a cover up? No, everybody knew. Now it's just everybody's juicy details and people going on and off the record and trying to, I mean, how many of these people being quoted were probably responsible? And then how many folks that are being quoted, didn't have the courage to step up? Okay, great. But I think one of the reasons why much of the media did not give it enough attention is that it's not that they didn't want to put pressure on Donald Trump or they weren't covering Donald Trump's, or they were over covering his trips and falls or whatever. It's that Donald Trump is an existential threat to the world order. And Donald, and maybe Joe Biden at that point in the cycle was the only person who could potentially beat Donald Trump. I don't think that's true. I think the polls were showing that, but I don't think that we had a strong backup plan. I don't think a brokered convention would have helped. I don't think an open primary would have helped. I think we're going to have Kamala Harris. Maybe if she had more of a runway, it would have helped. Maybe if there were different consultants running her campaign, it would have helped. Yeah. But fundamentally, this was about Donald Trump being an existential threat and folks really playing the wrong game.
Yeah. Let me say two more things about the Jake Tapper book, and then going to go to your questions. Number one, he's being just eviscerated on Twitter, mostly by people on the right, but not only. And so my question to you all, will that book sell well? Books about Biden generally do not sell well. It's currently number 7, last I looked on Amazon. Hogan, will that book sell well?
I think so, yeah.
Really?
Definitely here.
Yeah. No,
in DC, but yeah.
Well, no, but will it be a bestseller?
I think so.
Okay.
I do.
No, me.
Yeah, I think the only thing working against them is that 2 other ones came out in the months before.
So the publisher did something I've never recall seeing. About 2 weeks ago or so, they put out a video showing clips of Jake and Alex on TV, ostensibly demonstrating their bona fides that they were very tough on the question of Biden's mental acuity. Alex Thompson was. We, on Next Up, available now on your finer podcast platform, we went and looked at the interviews, the full interviews from which those clips were taken by the publisher. And I urge you to watch it and see if you think that the toughness that the publisher had hoped to illustrate is borne out by the entire interview.
Oh boy.
Take a look. All right. Dr. John is here. He wasn't earlier, but he is now. Thank you for racing home. And you watched all or some of the Trump speech. I already read what you said about comparing it to Jeffrey Sachs, but would love to hear, Doctor, welcome in, your thoughts on why you were so struck by the significance of what the president said.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to want to talk about that press conference, the farmer press conference from yesterday, until I heard the speech today, and that kind of blew me away. I also wanted to give you a shout out for the Sade reference this morning. Sade by Your Side was my wedding song with my wife, our first dance song. So
beautiful, great song.
Yeah, it's a great song. No, I think I remember back before the inauguration, early January, Trump posted on Truth a clip of Jeff Sachs speaking in his way, very bluntly, about his feelings about Netanyahu specifically and Israel's view of what needed to happen in the Middle East over the last 30 years. And when I saw that clip get posted, I was sort of struck because it's not what I would have expected for Trump to post. And with the recent, Mike Waltz drama and all the rumors of the Bibi breakup and who knows what the reality is, this trip seemed pretty significant. And so listening to that speech today made me think back to him posting that clip, because it sounded, like I said, it sounded like a speech Jeff Sachs would have written, mixed with like a Xi Jinping sort of everyone do your own thing and, everyone kind of play in your own playground and all get along and make money together. This very purely transactional view, as Trump has himself said, his reading of the golden rule is whoever has the gold makes the rules. I think it's pretty clear that Saudi and the Gulf has the gold, right? And as a way to still contain Iran via Saudi Arabia, who equally hate them, as a way to get Syria off of Chinese telecom and maybe onto US, which was another rumored part of the sanctions deal, as a way to get the UAE, who finances BRICS basically, and as a long-term security threat to the US, a rise of a rival payment system is certainly at the top of the list. My question is really, what does this mean? I know you mentioned the Abraham Accords in your scoop, but a lot of this seems to be happening without Israel, including the hostage situation here this week. What is going on? What's the truth of that part of it, and specifically around Trump and Netanyahu's relationship?
Great question. Either of you have insight into that? It's a very important and good question.
I don't want to get too outside of my private conversations, but as mentioned earlier in this show, I do have a very good relationship with someone who has been dispatched to Israel. It's my understanding everything is still in great shape. That the two are still in lockstep, but I don't want to go too much further than that. I mean, I know there are a lot of questions swirling around, but it always seems like Trump will, in essence, come back and be in lockstep, not that he ever left, with the only democracy in the region.
Nomi, you want to say anything about that?
I mean, I have the same questions. Why would Donald Trump cut these deals, especially with Qatar? Like, it would clearly enrage Netanyahu, unless, he somehow thinks that Netanyahu, who clearly has his own problems and can barely set foot outside of Israel right now without being arrested, does he see that there's no path forward, that he got the last hostage out, the American hostage? He did what he needed to do. I don't really know. I think Donald Trump's foreign policy is inherently flawed in so many ways. So I can't put myself in the mindset of Donald Trump. But if I were Netanyahu right now, I would be extremely angry. And I don't like Netanyahu. Make that very clear.
What does Bernie think about Netanyahu? Not a fan. Not a fan. Did they spend any time together?
I actually don't know. I assume they probably met before.
He called him out by name in a speech day before yesterday. I mean, he was pretty. The reason I recognize it is because I remember a Democrat had said on TV, a prominent Democrat said, "This is the furthest I've ever heard Bernie go, like calling out Netanyahu by name."
Yeah,
I don't remember what he said, but it wasn't
very
good.
critical of Netanyahu. He believes that Israel should exist. He has a very progressive foreign policy when it comes to Israel, the Mideast, but he's still extremely critical of Netanyahu and AIPAC. Before AIPAC, started putting money mostly into the right wing.
How does he feel about Larry Sanders' imitation of him? He thinks that's funny.
Not Larry Sanders.
Larry David.
Larry Sanders' is his brother. I was wait, Larry Sanders is brother.
Yeah, Larry David. He likes that imitation, I believe. Brings out a moment of humanity. John, thank you. Grateful to you. Thank you for your analysis and question. All right.
He watches those impressions while he's flying around in his private jet to stop the oligarchy.
It's the only way to stop him.
Daryl. You wait in line at Newark right now. How would he be able to get to California in time?
Exactly. Daryl, welcome back. Daryl has something to say about the Qatari plane. Daryl, remind folks where you live, Daryl.
I live outside of Philadelphia, three-time Trump voter. I almost want to continue the discussion you guys just had, because I usually love talking about Israel. But and I do think the Qatar plane kind of lends into it a little bit. I wanted to kind of ask you guys your thoughts on, there's a lot of criticism on the right about this Qatar plane, but what I find interesting is it's only from like the Israel right. Like you have people like Laura Loomer and Mark Levin just totally freaking out over this Qatar plane. And I don't even think it's about the plane. I think they see it as a sign of less influence of Israel. Again, I don't know how real all the recent reports are, but I could be hopeful.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
John Thune is against it too. Ted Cruz is against it too. They're pro-Israel, but I don't know what their main motivation is. Nomi, Hogan, any thoughts on that?
I think I'm with you. I think that this is Donald Trump has to be careful about his base. If Laura Loomer, she's turning on Donald. I mean, it's one thing for Ben Shapiro. He's been doing this for a bit, mainly because of his stance on Israel. But that's a concern, and I can't tell you how the Republican Party and the conservatives, if they move past this next week, because another thing has happened. But this is a stark move.
There are two things. I do think you're right, because, as you know, Trump moves so quickly. Something is going to happen. It's going to wipe that off the front page in no time. We saw that happen in the first admin. But also, I think, as you point out, Nomi, before, it's not like we all don't know Qatar's past, who they fund, where their dollars go around the world. So the question becomes, do you trust the president to understand all of that? Obviously, Democrats don't trust Trump to do that. If the roles reversed, we wouldn't trust Biden to do that. But I would argue one of them has a history of making some pretty big agreements on peace in a region where the experts in D.C. and those who have been doing this for decades told us moving the embassy to Jerusalem would set the whole region ablaze, recognizing Golan Heights would destroy everything. And it didn't.
Right now.
So again, we'll wait and see. But
Hogan, I respectfully say the following. I don't think we should so blithely say, well, of course, Democrats wouldn't trust a Republican president and vice versa. Like, I think we should aspire to be in a country where politics does stop at the water's edge and Democrats could support Donald Trump. Like the Abraham Accords were barely supported by Democrats. Right?
That's what I mean. You're making my point.
No, but I'm saying we should aspire for it to be different. I don't think.
I agree. Of course.
The way you said it.
That's what two-way does. It brings that kind of aspiration to the board.
That's what we're trying to
and
do.
I'm serious. I'm not blowing smoke. I think this is a good platform.
Yeah. I just the way you said it was like, well, basically that's the way it is and the way it's always going to be, and it just shouldn't be like that. Particularly on something like the Abraham Accords, where again, if a Democratic president's brokered that, it should be supported by Republicans and vice versa. Daryl, thank you, man. Always love having you on.
Appreciate it.
All right, Young Kim, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind for our two great guests, Hogan and Nomi.
Hey, I called in or raised my hand because I wanted to synchronize with my other colleague, Dr. John. So I'm a physician here in Chappaqua, New York, and I just saw briefly Trump's speech on commerce. So my comment was this. One is that, like, in reaction to that, he's transactional, right? By definition, isn't foreign policy transactional?
Oh, yes.
Right? It's transactional, right? You can color it saying it's an art of the deal.
All politics is.
It's all politics, transactional. But the other thing, other thought that came to my mind during this conversation was that, particularly in that beautiful room, was the scene from Road to Perdition, right? I forget the character's name, right? There's only murderers in the room, right? Because someone brought up all the bloodshed that has been going on for decades, as long as I can remember, right? So the reason I supported, that speech was that there's a form of engagement, but the question that I had, it's an engagement. In the previous decades, the engagement always been, we give you money, we'll give you arms, right? We'll do land for peace, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that was different was commerce, right? It was an engagement towards commerce. Let's try to make each other rich, wealthy, right? Because that's what parts of are excessively wealthy in that area, but they need to actually make other portions of Middle East share the wealth, as it were, right? So that's what I thought was sort of inspiring, and I concur with Dr. John as another physician that maybe this is another form of engagement that may work, right? May work, who knows? But it was something that was inspiring for me.
Interesting. Nomi.
I think when I referred to transactional, I meant more transactional towards Donald Trump, not the United States with these other countries in the Mideast. I was thinking more he was using his own how you could engage with him in a transaction and also, by the way, get what you want of the United States in response, and also not just right now, but for the future. I mean, this is Donald Trump's family has investments, all over the region, and their futures outside of the presidency very much rely on these relationships in the Mideast, and that started in his previous administration. Go ahead, Hogan. Sorry.
In fairness, they do. I think his family does have a lot of work and business all over the world. The difference is they were billionaire businessmen before Donald Trump became president. Hunter Biden did the same thing. He was a crackhead. He had no experience. He didn't do anything. What I'm saying, those are clearly two different things. One guy's picking up bags of cash and didn't offer anything. You actually have people who actually conduct business. Those are wildly different. However, there is always an attempt from other nations, and foreign policy is very difficult. It is very nuanced. It is very layered. But there's always attempts by other nations to try and get on the good side of the behemoth, of the powerhouse. And so that happens a lot, no question, regardless.
But it's on the president to follow the law. It's right. I wouldn't expect otherwise from Saudi Arabia, but it's on the president to follow the law. And, just to push back, this is a family that not only, Hunter Biden is a very flawed person. I am not going to sit there and defend Hunter Biden all day long, but to compare Hunter Biden's misgivings and what he did in Ukraine versus what they've
China and Russia,
Albania. I mean, the developments in Albania right now, what they're thinking about doing in Gaza. I mean, it is ridiculous how much money is being pushed around. We haven't even gotten to crypto.
But Nomi, what's the I don't disagree with your characterization, but what's the qualitative difference that you think makes what the Trumps are doing worse than what Hunter did?
Both bad. Vast size. One is, is like a penny in the bucket, and the other is billions and billions of dollars.
Well, they both made as much as they could.
Fair, but we have no proof that Joe Biden's foreign policy changed because of Hunter Biden, and it also occurred when he was not in office. Versus when
I don't think we have any proof that the president's changed anything for this. Right. I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't. I just don't know if we have any proof. What's a decision he's made that you think is inconsistent with what he otherwise would have done?
Well, I think abruptly, Qatar, perfect example. The fact that,
sadly, I think he would have done it anyway.
Shift away from your ally Netanyahu just like that overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
young Kim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Grateful to you. Guys, I want to have a booking conversation because you guys help book the show. Hogan's trying to get Mike Huckabee. Laura Loomer was on. Okay.
Oh,
and this is months ago. And I tried to be extremely respectful to her. And I hope I was. Some people thought I cut her off a little bit, and I did, but only in the way I'd cut Hogan off because, they go on for too long. Just kidding. Anyway, we've tried to get her back. We're still trying to get her back because, she's the de facto White House personnel director. But here's my question. Some people have criticized the bringing Laura Loomer on. I say, if Bin Laden were alive, I'd put him on two-way. Like, I'll put anybody on if they've got things to say that are interesting. And any journalist who said they wouldn't interview Bin Laden, I don't understand that point of view. So, Nomi, you first, then Hogan. If Laura Loomer will come back on the show, would you recommend I do that or not do that?
I think you should do it. Why not?
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Hogan.
Yes.
All right. Hogan, can you help us book Laura Loomer?
That's right. That was a long setup for
exactly.
you to say, Hogan, contact Laura Loomer.
Yeah. Is she in your contacts the way that Jeffrey Goldberg is in Mike Waltz's contacts? Is she?
No, because it's not on Signal. I think I actually do have her contact. I think I do. I don't think I've ever talked to her but once, but I think I have her contact.
All right.
I have a friend who's friends with her, and then she attacked me recently on X for something that she should be watching.
Let's discuss that topic. Say you've got two friends, hypothetically, okay,
yeah.
and they attack each other on social media. Do you ignore it? Do you try to bring them together? Do you pick a side to side with? How do you handle that? Nomi?
I've been in this situation many a time.
Yeah, I'm in this situation like every day.
I think it just depends on the topic. It depends on the people. If somebody did something really bad, I mean, everybody's fighting with each other all the time. Like,
but how often do you step in and like do like a text to both of them, or you do that a lot?
I'll do a text. I mean, I usually, like, if I'm really close to them and it is something that's very problematic, I'll get on the phone and we'll try to sort it out.
But will you do them together, or be like shuttle diplomacy?
Usually separately to get a feel of where their minds are. And then if it's something that's like a, misunderstanding, maybe bring them together.
Yeah.
In 2020, there was a lot of this. And then we found out certain people in the Bernie world, like, actually like switched to the other side and we're like, okay, we're done with you. So you have to take sides.
Yeah. Hogan's constantly adjudicating between Don and Eric.
That's so dumb. No, but I will say, I would never do it publicly. I'm not going to jump on Twitter and try to litigate something. I'm going to talk to them offline. That'd be stupid.
Have either of you ever successfully reconciled two of your friends who were fighting on Twitter? Have you ever actually succeeded in that?
Ish.
Yeah, I think ish. Although right now I jumped in the DNC David Hogg thing because I tried to go to David Hogg at an event a few weeks ago and he was not having it and he was totally condescending. And I was like, well, you lost so now I'm team Ken Martin.
Okay, let me ask you this, because I asked Sean and Dan this morning. I say he will be gone by Thanksgiving, either forced out or quit. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, he's going to be out because, I mean, there's two separate things. There was something that occurred way before this whole I'm starting a PAC and making money off of it thing. With Malcolm Kenyatta, and like they both ran their elections outside of the rules of the DNC.
Yeah.
Now they're getting in trouble for it.
That's what we call pretext.
Yes, that's the pretext.
Yeah. Go ahead, Hogan.
If anyone knows getting screwed over by the DNC, it's Nomi and what happened to Bernie years previous. Right. So we're all aware.
But Nomi, nonetheless, despite the fact that you're against the DNC messing with people, you think he should be gone, right?
I think he should be gone. I think that listen, if it was an honest mistake, fine. You learn from that. But he's just doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down. And I'm getting so many damn fundraising emails from him. And he's going on, he's got a publicist now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, it's the David Hogg show. This isn't about, and for those of you guys who don't know, let me just make this very clear because not a lot of people are correcting the record. Ken Martin wanted to change the rules of the DNC because for the last 10 years, the DNC has been meddling in primaries. Yeah. So he said, don't get involved in primaries. David Hogg starts this organization to challenge incumbents. You can do that. You can do that. Justice Democrats exists. There's a bunch of organizations that do that. Go do it. But if you're a DNC member, if you're a vice chair, you are now making money off of going and meddling in elections. There's conflicts of interest, all sorts of things. And I think I'm at the point, I'll say it on the record, I think he's doing the bidding of the consultants that got pushed out of the DNC.
Whoa.
Yep.
Hogan, it took David Hogg to make Nomi sound like Donna Brazile, DNC loyalist. Like, it's all about the party. It's all about
the opposite. No, the opposite. The consultants who've been
the consultant thing, but what I'm saying is you're like saying don't mess with the DNC.
No. I mean, reform the DNC all you want. But his talking points are straight out of like the consultants who've been playing games internally for years, except because he's criticizing this big entity, it sounds like he's like some sort of leftist. He's not. He's
you two have made me happier than anyone on earth today, with the possible exception of Pete Rose's bookie. So very grateful to you both. Yeah, very grateful to you both. Thank you for being on. Nomi, you going to the Knicks game tomorrow?
I'll watch it.
You'll watch it. Okay. Thank you both. Very grateful. Hope you'll come back regularly. Hogan, don't forget, I need Laura Loomer and Huckabee ASAP.
Okay. And Sarah.
Huckabee. We always want Sarah on. Thank you both. Right now, turn over to Michael Moynihan. The Moynihan Report, he's got Rabbi David Wolpe on. It was recorded earlier today, but it's streaming live at 7 a.m. or not live. It's streaming debut on his YouTube channel. So go to that right now. David Wolpe, a friend of mine and a brilliant and wonderful man, and it's a great episode. So please go watch that. And then my podcast next up with a long discussion of the Jake Tapper book, Rich Lowry of National Review, and my interview with Colorado Senator Michael Bennet. which we analyze the state of the Democratic Party, all available on Next Up, on YouTube later tonight, and on podcasts currently. And then 9 a.m. tomorrow, the morning meeting. Sean Dan and I will see you then. Thank you for watching. Thanks so much to our two guests and for everybody who asked questions and raised your hands. Good night.